Clay, I've got to say, you're seeing all this analysis of Putin might be crazy, Putin is erratic. Again, I don't tell you that I have all the answers here. And I think there are a lot of people running around acting like they do have the answers on this, because I've just seen how people, very smart, very attuned people, get major foreign policy-related issues quite wrong. I think the foreign policy establishment in America has been pretty consistently wrong when there's consensus over the last 20, well, some would say the last forever, but certainly over the last 20 years, mostly in the Middle East and South Asia, but in other places as well. I would be cautious about saying Putin's crazy. I think that that's something that people might want to hear right now, or maybe they don't because they're worried that means he'll use nukes, but they think that there's no strategy behind this. He thought about this for a long time. I wouldn't comfort anybody by telling them Russia's plans have already fallen on the rock, so to speak, have come apart on the shoals, and maybe now it'll be a matter of days before he's retreating. He knows a lot about this region and has a pretty good understanding of what he's trying to accomplish. So I think people that say they're in Putin's head, Clay, I think they're going too far. I would caution against thinking that they know the mind of this man.
One of the guys that's been the best, I think, at sharing information, Marco Rubio, senator from Florida, tweeted out in the last 30 minutes or so that based on what he is seeing and hearing, that now there is potentially going to be an old school style medieval siege of Kiev.
Yes.
Trying to cut it off, that the attempt to just march the army right in and have all of the defenders lay down their weapons and effectively decapitate the government has not worked. But now you enter into a long-run siege. And I think that's an important, interesting discussion here, Buck, because then it gets into, and Marco Rubio's asking this question too, how committed are all of these alliance countries that are supporting the resistance in Ukraine to helping to get material into Kiev to allow the fight to continue? Not just, by the way, weapons, but also fuel, food, everything that would allow a modern metropolis like Kiev is to continue. And to your point on Vladimir Putin's mental state, what I find most intriguing now is as things start to spin, I think it's fair to say a little bit out of control. Every day into the future gets harder and harder to predict. Is it possible when you look at the ruble dropping 20%, with the Russian stock market being closed, interest rates doubling effectively overnight, and some of those oligarchs out there, the billionaires that have helped to support Vladimir Putin, is it possible that that economic pressure that's brought to bear starts to put Putin himself under pressure in his native country in a way he has not been in a long time? When you got everybody standing in line, Buck, trying to get cash out of the ATM because they're worried about whether the banks are going to have runs on them, that is something where some of that quiet resistance that Putin has dealt with in the past could suddenly become more pronounced and more prominent. I think it's an intriguing thing to contemplate.
I do. I've seen some analysis of this, and I would tend to agree with Putin could not survive this as an abject disaster where he's humiliated. I mean, his regime, his power, I don't know if he could survive that back home, although if anyone could, it's Vladimir Putin, who is a true authoritarian, a true dictator. But it certainly would rock his rule to its foundations. On the other hand, when we look at what's being done, I try to caution everybody because I can see this narrative of a glorious Ukrainian resistance kicking Russian soldiers' butts all over the country, and Putin's going to go back with his tail between his legs. I think, I don't know, that underestimates the planning, the will, and the goals of Vladimir Putin in this situation. I just don't want to underestimate the opponent in this context. And I think people that are getting caught up in there's the ghost of Kyiv, which apparently it's not even real, the fighter plane that's shooting down all these other planes, the Snake Island situation, which turns out they actually surrendered it. There's all the grannies taking up arms. Okay, fine. When that's true, that's one thing. Some of this stuff isn't even true. Do not underestimate Vlad. Look at what has happened over the last 10 years. Somehow this guy oversteps and gets what he wants time and time again. Maybe this is the turning point. Maybe this is where he gets slapped down. But the fact that we're not even willing to go after the Russian energy sector.
That's the big issue.
Here is a Ukrainian member of parliament, Alexei Goncharenko, who is calling for the embargo of Russian oil, saying, look, if you guys want to really hit Russia, you got to cut off their oil export.
We need embargo on Russian oil and gas, because now Russian oil and gas is full of Ukrainian blood. More than 350 civilians are killed. 16 children are killed, and their blood, their innocent blood, is inside Russian gas and oil. So embargo, ban on Russian gas and oil, that is something from moral point of view, but certainly from a practical point of view too, because Russia is just a big gas station of the world. 2/3 of their export is oil and gas. 1/2 of revenues of Russian state budget is gas and oil. So let's stop it, and you will see that Putin will surrender just in the days, and that will enormously help not only us, but the whole world.
Half the budget of the Russian government comes from oil. Think about this. Now China will still buy it. We know that, so they do have an outlet. And other people, they're going to be black. There's going to be black market sales of oil. But Clay, eventually, the very uncomfortable conversation that's going to happen in this country, if the government is really devoted to standing for the principle of democracy in Ukraine, is okay. We really want this thing to end. Do the American people want to see their gas prices go up 100% and all products along with it, or 10% or 30% or whatever the number may be? Dramatic increase in prices and cost of living for all Americans to stand with Ukraine. Are people willing to do that? Do people want to do that? Is that in the interest of the American people? This is something you're going to have to think about, I think, going forward.
And I think we need to continue to hammer Democrats who allowed our own production of oil and gas to be dialed back down. We could, in theory, if we really got rolling, make up for much of the oil and gas that Russia would otherwise be providing to Europe, around the world. We need to get Saudi Arabia, who we have decent relationships with, to agree to pump more oil and gas. But yes, he's right. You can't win an economic embargo when you allow the most valuable asset of the country that you are economically embargoing to continue to be sold. And by the way, Buck, to continue to be sold at a higher and higher price because the price of gas is going up due to the crisis that's existing right now.
This would be like someone like, I'm going to boycott Outkick.com. I'm only reading their sports coverage. Like, well, that's not really going to do it.
It is a unbelievable failure. Could be far more successful.
We refuse to allow narratives that are a lie to just continue to grow and be pushed around, and particularly because you could see they seized on this word of or the wording rather that Trump used in the interview that Clay and I did with him last week in Mar-a-Lago. They've seized on this to create this Republicans are backing Putin. This is a lie. And Howard Stern, who I never was a fan of his work. Would you say you liked his work?
I used to be impressed with Howard Stern's rebelliousness, and I enjoyed listening to some of his long-form interviews. But since COVID started, he has been an abject embarrassment. The Howard Stern of the 90s and the 2000s, the private parts Howard Stern, would despise what he has become.
He is now
the man.
Yeah, he's a tool of the apparatus that he once proclaimed to be fighting against. And it's actually sad on some level to watch it, but here he is going along with the talking point about Republicans.
I hate the Soviet Union. I hate the communist regime. I always hated communism because it always turns into an autocratic situation like in China where they cut off your freedoms. I hate the fact that I used to love the Republicans, and their stance was firmly anti-communist, firmly pro-capitalist, anti-communist, and certainly a staunch defender of free people and free elections. I voted for many Republicans. I don't see how I'll ever get back to that. They've just totally disappointed me in their support of Vladimir Putin, the praise they heap on him, Trump's praise of Vladimir Putin. This guy's a f***ing animal, and I wish he was dead, like I wish Hitler was dead.
The Republicans do not support Vladimir Putin. I don't know how much more We can scream this from the rooftops. Please stop repeating this lie. Libs and Howard Stern and whoever else, stop. The Republicans Republicans are the ones who armed the Ukrainians so that they can actually fight back with Javelin anti-tank missiles. Trump sent sniper rifles and missiles, which is why you're seeing all the video of the wreckage of armored personnel carriers and tanks all over Ukraine right now. Obama's regime was too cowardly to do that.
This is just further evidence of, as Rush would call them, the drive-by media. But the number of people that don't even read articles or don't do any research at all, it would be a fascinating story. If you're a kid out there and you're in college or you're in high school, you probably get some of these questions like I do, Buck, where people are thinking, hey, I want to do a paper on something interesting. This would be a fascinating story to examine. Our interview with Donald Trump on Tuesday and how quickly it was turned into the entire essence of that interview being, oh, Trump praised Vladimir Putin, which is not at all reflected in the interview. It reminds me a little bit of the very fine people lie, which obviously took root, and Biden used it as part of the justification for why he was going to run for president. I know a lot of you out there remember. But this lie that Trump praised Nazi protesters, neo-Nazi protesters in Charlottesville, Virginia, when if you actually look at everything that he said, it was the exact opposite of that. And so it's amazing how quickly, this is where Trump was correct, the fake news element of our world will grab a 30-second clip. Remember, he talked to us for a full hour. And really analyzed the Ukraine situation in an intelligent, I thought, manner. And they took a joke and a piece of sarcasm and an analysis of a tactical issue and turned it into an endorsement of everything Vladimir Putin was doing. And they're still trying to make that argument almost a week after our interview.
It's amazing to see how there's no introspection ever, even about something as serious as this, from the media. Also interesting, isn't it? How many times have you and I been asked, Clay, by these people who are commenting on this? Has anyone reached out to you from Politico or the Washington Post? You know, what did you take President Trump's? You were in the interview. What did you? Of course not. I mean,
not one person.
I love that they're some right wing show like we're sitting by the side of the road somewhere with placards and trying to convince people the end is near as they drive by. It's the biggest radio show by audience, according to Nielsen, in America. So I don't know. Maybe they should have some idea of what we're doing here and who's actually talking to the former president. But can't expect the media to do their homework or be honest. And that's what we see from all of this. David in Minneapolis, Minnesota, wanted to get you in here. Hey, David.
Putin's core, he's an egomaniacal narcissist. And an egomaniac doesn't hate anything worse than being belittled, being made to seem small. The entire world is saying how impotent and pathetic he is, but more importantly, how pathetic his army is. And let's just be honest, guys, that army is an extension of Putin's Johnson, and that's how he sees it. So you're undercutting him as a man, and he's being boxed into a corner. And if he does something stupid tactically is try to surround Ukraine, that's going to be a blunder of all blunders, militarily speaking, because time is not on Putin's side right now. The whole world is going to continue to turn on him, especially if he does something stupid.
My concern is that you're right about the embarrassment that this is going to reflect upon Putin, and that he might do something outlandish, like in the analogy we used earlier. Guy uses the fight, shows up with a knife or a gun. Well, those are heavy artillery weapons, potentially including nukes for Putin. That makes me nervous about the choices that he's going to make going forward.